Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keeping It Spiritually Simple. Today I'm with Julie the Lionhearted. She's an awesome guest and has a lot to say to everyone. And currently, right now, I'm just going to say it because I had to do a few videos on it this morning regarding expression of self, regarding the feelings that we have that we can express. And, we've come so far in history to the 20th century where this should be obsolete, right? We don't have to be persecuted for how we feel about something or if we like or don't like something. And right now we're being governed by something called social media. And it's not just a bunch of people in a committee room going beep, beep. It's bots that are programmed into computers to flag certain words, just like when you apply for a job. Resumes are done differently now. And in order to get noticed and get pulled from the group, you've got to have these key words that the job is looking for, right? Well, that's what's happening in our social media, but not in a good way. So it is squelching the voices of many, but many of us who are in the lion-hearted club, we are not going to allow that to discourage us. So we will just find ways around keeping ourselves from the bot collectors, so to speak. So here we are. Julie, how are you, darling?
I'm great. Enthusiastic, looking forward to the world when it's healing. I think it's already happening. And just feeling really enthusiastic about everything.
Well, that's awesome. And I know you do group work and so on and so forth. And I love catching your lives when you're available.
Yes.
But sometimes we go to bot confinement centers. And right now, Miss Julie Lionhearted is in one of those. And, whatever, gives you time to just sort of sit back and come back out again, right? So
Yep.
we're enthusiastic because energies are different right now, and recognition of old programming isn't working anymore. And then how do we step up and take action with that? So tell us some of the things that are coming through to you.
Oh, well, the Anunnaki have come through, and they are benevolent beings, and they have told me that they are waking back up again. So apparently there is an old US report on the Sumerian gods reawakening. So they have been talking to me, and we are discussing things, and we are helping them to awaken. So as far as that is concerned, they are the actual benevolence. Now, if you go back in the history, and I've been told that I carry in me the history of all of everything. So I can go back, and none of what I see coincides with history of the world. Doesn't. So that's something that I have to start speaking on, is what I'm seeing on the history of this world as to the Akashic records and what they really are. Because the Akashic records are inside of each of us. So we can access them once we awaken to our higher self. The Akashic records are very important because they actually are the recordings of what has happened on this plane since the beginning of our time. And it's just really, really interesting because the benevolent gods, the movie Stargate's a true story. The benevolent gods, they were benevolent, though. They were not evil. And so they're the same gods applied to every single area. So if you were in, like, say, Scandinavia, they were Thor and Odin and Loki. And if you were in Greek, they were Zeus and, Mercury, and the same as Rome. They named theirs all Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, blah, 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 blah. All of the gods and goddesses were benevolent, and they were giants. And what they did was they came around to different areas once a year. And there were great celebrations when they arrived. There were great feasts. And they brought technology, they brought new knowledge, they brought alien technology, they brought everything so that the people could thrive and do well. It wasn't about surviving, it was about thriving. And so when the reptilians arrived 450,000 years ago, what they did was they arrived here with a plan, and that plan was to remove these benevolent gods because we were all too darn happy. Now, if you take a look at human has 4 bodies: spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. Reptilians and draconians have like 2.5. They've got mental and physical and a tiny bit of spirit and no emotional whatsoever, none. So they don't have any feelings towards any of us. As us being benevolent beings, they don't feel that towards us because they don't have that. So they arrived here knowing fully well that they would come here and take over this planet and remove our benevolent gods and then replace it with one not so benevolent god, so that people could continue to feel the fear, continue to feel the worry. This is 450,000 years ago. This is not a short time ago. We've been on this planet for millions of years, and we have done so many different things, and we have been so many different things. And it's just our relatives arriving back down here to help us because it's who we are. We are not of this plane. We were brought here the same as everything else. The dinosaurs didn't exist according to the way they say. They were actually brought here by the reptilians because the reptilians' role back in the day has always been to create planets for habitation. So they had an actual role, but they've never been given a planet. So they're not very happy with things because they've always wanted to have their own place and they've never had it. They've got one now, which is good. But in reality, the dinosaurs are their workers, and they brought these big beasts to the planet to create an atmosphere that would help the planet to become habitable. So with their spore, with their eating habits, and they created all kinds of vegetation, and they created all kinds of a wondrous place to live. It became temperate because they created it with their habitat creation because they knew how to do it. And they were taken back off. A few who passed away over time because it took them not a short period of time to do this. Those are the remains that people find. The rest of them were taken off planet. They were not murdered by a meteor. They were taken back off planet because they were absolutely not from here. They didn't just show up like the way they feel, the dinosaurs and then the people. Well, were we around when the dinosaurs were around? Heck no, we weren't. The dinosaurs stayed for a while, then they left. When they left and they moved on, then this planet sat cooking for a while in all of its beautiful glory. And then when human was brought here, it was after all of the Star Wars, after all of the destruction of so many different planets, after the destruction of so many different beings, trillions of them, trillions. And people look into the sky at night and they see the stars, and what they don't understand is that those stars are the actual continuously burning planets. They just don't stop burning. They continuously burn because they were blown up. And also we have to remember the number of light years it takes for things to get to us, right? So we can see a planet that's burning up and it might have blown up 2 million years ago, 10 million years ago. We don't know. But the reality of the whole thing is that we are not from here. And the people who are arriving to come and help us are not from here either. But this is our home now because it was established as our home during the time that all of the wars happened. And they decided they needed to make a place that people could go to heal, lick their wounds, find their power, remember who they are, because they completely forgot who they were and what they were, gods. And that is why the benevolent gods loved us so much, because we were equal with them and they had no superiority over us. They just had the technology and the ways because they were the planet planners. They're the ones who throughout history, the Anunnaki have done every single planet in the cosmos to create for human habitation. They are peace loving. They've never been anything but creators and co-creators. And for the draconians and the reptilians to arrive and take that away, this is what we've been suffering with all this time. Kind of sad, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the history is not what anybody thinks it is. And I've even gone back into the history and looked at things because I was told to start experimenting on what I can see. So I went to the bubonic plague. If you look up the symptoms of mercury poisoning, They are exactly the bubonic plague, because the people were poisoned deliberately, because the elites decided that they wanted to get rid of a lot of the poor people. They ate off of silver dishes, and the poor people ate off of wooden dishes, and they made them sick on purpose, killed them. The elites didn't die because they ate off of silver, so they had constant exposure to colloidal silver, right?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, so there's all these stories. So mercury poisoning was nothing to do with that. Isn't that lovely? This has gone on for hundreds of thousands of years. People say, "Oh, we've been held captive for 2,000 years." Longer, way longer. And the history that I go into on the spiritual stuff, the making of medicines, just everything. I'm accessing 450,000 years ago. I'm not accessing 100 years ago, 200 years ago, because a lot of the stuff that we did back then was even tainted. So we have to go farther and farther back to find who we are and what we're doing. It's just very interesting.
Yeah. And, even today, we don't use real silverware. We call it silverware, but it's not real silverware.
No.
We have to access the history in order to bring it forward, because that's where the mystical magic is. That's where the real life force is.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about what you were saying about information and all that stuff. We have everything from within us. How does that possible? Well, how is it possible that you could put all this information on a little microchip and it can give the information to this computer? How do we have a magnetic strip on the back of a credit card that knows exactly all the information about us, how much money's in the account, etc.? What drop of blood can be programmed with so much information? But we're trained, everything is outside of us, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not big enough to command my body to remember this. I'm not big enough to command my body to repair this.
Yeah.
But we are. And this is the kind of messages people like you and I are out there saying, you've got it all in here.
Yeah.
And the fact that, because I know you do a lot of viewing and you get a lot of information, and you've written books and so on. And I always love my time with Julie Lionhearted. So what else can you share today, girlie?
Well, it's interesting that you were talking about, what you were just talking about, because the power is within us in every way. And the God is within us. And that is what the benevolent gods actually helped us to remember, because we forgot in all of our pain and all of our sorrow from all of the wars. We came here very wounded and very damaged. And we actually laid in peat pods under the ground for hundreds of thousands of years before we could even emerge. And the reason we couldn't emerge. So they talk about the peat bodies. You know how they talk about, the peat bodies that they find in the peat bogs, and those are actually probably one of us who passed away in there and didn't make it out. Maybe the pod had a leak. The pod was the equivalent of a med bed. So it healed us and it brought us back to our 4-body system in a really healthy way while we were in there morphing and cryogenically kept in a state of stasis while we were healing and while the planet was preparing for us. So there were billions of us that this happened with. The number of souls on this planet has never changed throughout history. It never has. So they talk about global warming, climate change, overpopulation. It's all not true. Everything is still the same as it ever was. It's just that they'll show you things that look like it's scary and stuff, and it's just never real. But in reality, this planet, like this plane that we live on, is no different than it ever has been. The only difference that it has is 400 years ago, they installed a moon, and there was no moon here 400 years ago, honestly and truly. And interestingly enough, how old the Sahara Desert is also 400 years old. So they created deserts and arid and humid temperatures and climates on the planet by placing the moon there in order that it can control our weather. And it is not a planet It's not a satellite to Earth. It's a ship, and it was put there. You would call it the Death Star, the same as you would from Star Wars. And it is not a good place. And it is now deactivated. So there will be no more power coming from the moon to us. And with the removal of the moon being deactivated, it's really interesting because my Earth balancing group, we worked with that and we deactivated the moon because we knew that it was an evil entity. And it has been populated by some very dark entities to do what they had to do to us. So we deactivated, and it was very interesting because about a week later, I saw on Facebook an article, and it was so cool because it said, the moon is cracking. So the moon is literally deactivated. It's cracked and it's no longer any healthy. So it's going to leave. It'll be gone. And so if you look at the temperatures on the planet before the arrival of the moon 400 years ago, what you got was a beautiful planet where it was nice everywhere. It wasn't nasty anywhere. We didn't get the storms. We didn't get the bad weather. We didn't get anything. We just had it was a beautiful temperate climate. And it's going to be that way again. That's what we're working towards now, is working it towards becoming the temperate climate, the temperate place where we return back to our sovereignty, our owning of this planet, and our being stronger than you can ever imagine. I can't believe the strength that I just got a vision the other day, and I wrote on it was, do you realize that your lungs are your wings? Some of the things I see, I'm telling you, it's just like, I know. But when you think about it and you look at a picture of your lungs, they look like folded up wings, don't they?
Yes.
So that told me that the way that you can teleport and fly is by breath work. Because
and that's true. That's in every philosophy is all about the breath work, right?
Breath work. But nobody realizes, holy crap, I can fly if I breathe the certain ways. I can actually lift right off if I breathe certain ways. So that's really neat because we can do so much more if we can start understanding. So I've been starting to do a bit of breath work, and it's really been interesting. And the visions that have been coming through, holy smokes. I had the whole Galactic Federation of World in my face the other night, like a Zoom conversation. I could see all of them. And there were aliens, and there were giants, and it was amazing. And I saw all of them, and they were all talking to me. It was so cool,
It's wonderful.
So, things are changing.
I want to talk about the moon real quick. So being deactivated, it's been here for 400 years. And we are taught through science that the moon controls the tides, right? Tides of all many things, but let's just go with the water. So we have that moon cycle for menstrual cycle. We have the moon cycle for the tides, high and low tides throughout the day. It's usually we have additional flooding when the moon is full, etc. If storms come at full moon, they have much more disaster included in them because of the water. And then we have full moon celebrations and ceremonies that people do. So if we didn't have a moon 400 years ago, were there no moon ceremonies? So where did that come from?
That comes from the deep state. That is the darkest parts. What they did was they made us depend on the moon. And the moon controlled the weather, controlled the tides, controlled the floods, controlled the storms, controlled everything. You've heard of HARP. The moon runs those. The moon actually generates all of the weather control on the planet. And so if the moon is deactivated, then we can take power over the storms. And I do. Whenever somebody lets me know they've got a storm coming, I immediately go there and change the weather for them. And the storm doesn't happen because we know how to do this stuff. I've learned how to do it, and I share it. So I'm sharing it all over the place with lots of people. If you live in Australia, like my friend Desley, you live in Australia, control the weather. You can do it. She does. Like, so, the thing is about us learning our power is for us to share that knowledge so that we don't have to just do it ourselves. It's, and I was thinking about this the other day. And I was thinking, because the Galactic Federation of Worlds told me that I have to speak of the spirit to the world. They told me that the other night, and I was like, oh, good God, what the heck am I going to do? Like, 'cause every time they tell me I got to do something, I'm like, okay, breathe, So they said, I have to speak to spirit on the world because I have been chosen. And I went, oh, good God. Okay, fine. I know that when this stuff comes through and you have to listen, you have to understand that you don't know if it's going to be now, could be 5 years, could be 2 years, could be whatever, right? I'm just trusting that that message is true. But I have to listen to these messages and I have to find a way to humanize it, make it so that I can see its rationality. And so that's what I do. Anytime I get anything, I go and I start researching whatever I receive so I can find out that, yes, I was on the right track, you know? Sorry. It's just like all the medicines that I make. I feel them and they glow to me and they talk to me. So I don't just make these medicines willy-nilly. I'm making them so that they're power horses of healing. And I'm getting results like you can't believe from people. People who have been on blood pressure medicine for 20 years are using my hawthorn berry and they're off of their medicines. Like I am, because of the blessings and the love and all of the energy that you put into doing things, it makes a difference on how people feel. So I'm working really hard, not with a now vision, but in a short time vision where people are going to start needing the natural things rather than the contrived and prescribed things, right?
Yes.
So
the synthetics, we're getting away.
Yeah.
We need to move to out of the synthetics it's insane.
So somebody asked me a question when I was working at VAS yesterday. They asked me a question. What do I do for my thyroid? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into researching what plant medicine I can use to heal that, because there's something to heal every single thing. And, we can't just blanket something. We've got to research too and figure out what it is that makes us, so I can trust my instincts. And then after I get my instincts and intuitions, I then go look and I'm like, oh, that was right. Because listening to inside of yourself, this is what I teach people more than anything. Please listen to the inside of yourself. Don't listen to the outside, because the outside is going to tell you lies.
Yes.
And then when you get a message, is it your message for you only, or is it for everybody for you to share it? Sometimes there's that too. Sometimes a message that you receive is for just you to apply to your world and then share it out once you've applied it. So you can realize, like, for instance, after I had my car accident, I had my diaphragm crushed and I had terrible acid reflux for years. And I went to the doctor and I said, I don't know what's the matter. I just can't stop. I want to throw up. My stomach hurts all the time. He put me on medication and I didn't know that this was bad medication. I had no idea. And then I started getting bladder infection after bladder infection. And then one day my higher self came through and said, you do know that medicine is harming your bladder and your kidneys, don't you? And I'm like, no. So I went off of it. But if they hadn't told me, if I hadn't listened to the inside, I would have been in a worse place, because, there are so many different side effects from all these medications. So I'm on 0 medications now and thriving because I know what to do to help myself. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
it's just what,
awesome.
yeah. And that's why I teach it, because if I can do it for myself, I can teach you how to do it too, so that you don't have to be on anything. Our goal is to bring our body to its highest good, to bring our body to its healing. So when you go to bed at night, don't go to bed at night with the intention to just go to sleep. Go to bed with the intention, demand and command that all your pain is gone. You sleep like a log. You feel great. You create it. It happens just because you decided that you were going to take power over yourself. It's amazing how it works. It really is.
Well, it's the God source light within you.
Yes, it is.
And it's not outside of you. It's everywhere, but you can command it so, and you give full consent and surrender. And it's insanely magical what occurs.
Here's the other thing. The Anunnaki created us in their image. That's true. They carry the God spark within them. We activated the God spark in all of humankind on the weekend. They carry the God spark within them. We activated the giants, the Anunnaki, the Sumerian gods, who are the original gods for all of us. we activated them. Through that activation can activate the God spark in humankind, because we are one. All of us are one, you know? And when you look at that light, like if you see a whole bunch of people stand in a row, there's a light that comes from their heart that goes through the heart of every single one of them. There is this light, and that God spark is the part of your God self that has not been activated due to the fact that the Anunnaki were put down. And they were put into a state of stasis and sleep, and some of them were turned to stone, but we know how to change them back. Remember Star Wars when they turned Han Solo to stone? This is true stuff. This really happens. If you look at some of the statues of some of the ancient ones, they are the Anunnaki put into stone, these giant beings. And you can see on their arms, like just a certain way that their bodies are in the actual sculptures. It shows the sinew, it shows the veins. Nobody had that technology back then to do that, did they? Or did they just turn this being to stone?
Mhm.
And it's, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so this is really true. And so the activation of the Anunnaki, which has now happened, will activate all of the God spark within all of humankind by their choice, because there are some on the planet who don't have souls. So the ones who have souls, the higher selves, will activate, and those people will become who they're meant to be. So the activation of that is going to happen, and not very far away, because all of this is working in timelines. And from what I'm seeing from the work that we've been doing with my Earth Balancing group, and then all of the people who are also doing this on the planet, not just us, there's other groups too.
Mhm.
We are all working in cognizance to get this done. We are not fooling around about it. We're serious. And it is making a difference. And there are certain little peepholes coming through on the people who are not awake yet. They're starting to say things and ask questions and wonder. And that number is growing every day. So I am happy about that, because those people have no idea how powerful they are until they decide to all of us join together. And then it's
Yeah.
going to show. I wrote in my book years ago, Linear to Zigzag, that's for sale on Amazon. I wrote in that book years ago, if every single person had a single thought at the very same moment, every one of us, to heal this planet,
Yes.
oh, you can feel it, can't you? You can feel that. Yeah. If every single one of
Yes.
us. So we're working towards that, aren't we? We're working towards that one thought, that they might have this little niggling thought inside of them that goes, I'm questioning this, something's not right. And then
Mhm.
the door opens. I had somebody the other day phone me, and I gave her my book, and she hasn't realized it, but I do, because that book was written 30 years ago, and it was written for now, which is really funny how that works, right? But I wrote that book all those years ago, and this woman phoned me the other day, and she said, I read your book. And she said, you know, I'm starting to see things, and I'm starting to feel things, and I'm feeling wonder. She's 88. I'm feeling wonder. I'm feeling some bubbly joy inside of me. And I'm realizing the book activated her. Like, holy smokes, it activated her.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing her this morning, so I can't wait to tell her, because she's going to go, oh yes, it did. Because I see it, because she talks about the book, and then all of a sudden she's got this wonder and this joy and these bubbly bliss. And I'm like, you know? So all it takes is one little thing to read something, or to have someone say something. If there's a little tiny niggly hole there, guess what? It gets in, and then boom, because all you need is that little God spark. And once that God spark goes in, it takes over, and then you're there. Isn't that cool?
Absolutely. And it can be used in the other way too. It can be
I know.
used in the other way too, which is so you have a choice to command what it is that you would like to manifest, and make the little ziggly hole more available to more loving light, or
Yep.
to everyday blah blah blah. But I
Yep.
got to go back to something. This full moon thing.
Ah.
This moon thing. So was visualizing when you were saying this, because if we're all out there ceremonially saluting the moon, whether it's once a month or occasionally or just in being mesmerized by it, we're giving it our attention and our energy, and therefore we're giving it what some would call our loosh energy, right?
We're giving it our power.
Yes, that's what I mean. All of
Yeah.
our attention. And if you have so many people doing it, but then a lot of people like myself for many years always thought it was a Native American type of ceremony. And
Uh-huh.
people still do it to today. So
Okay.
we're saying, because I know that whole civilization has been suppressed and battered and beaten and everything else. So I don't know anyone directly to ask them what original teachings they have, but are we saying
Even
that this is not,
those are
the
even
moon
tainted.
was not a Native American celebration?
It was an everybody celebration back then. Every single culture had the same kind of belief systems because we were told to have them by this one God, right? Even the natives had many gods back then too, but they lost them too. You know, the only god they ever looked at after they lost all of their gods was Shinkleep. Now you know who Shinkleep is?
No, I do not.
Coyote, Loki, Mercury. Coyote was the trickster. So a lot of the customs and the belief systems need to go back 450,000 years, even in the native population, because all of us were here in our different colors from different planets. We were, but we're all brothers and sisters. We're all one. The reality is that if you go back in history, now I know this for a fact because I work with natives all the time, and I adore them. I adore all my friends. They're wonderful people, and I just love them. And I'm going to tell you right now, their belief systems are the same as the Bible. So they have been taught to believe the same things. They have a history. I started writing this book about reincarnation, and I ended up in Atlantis with it. And I don't know how I ever got there, and I never finished the book, but I'm going to because it's an interesting book. And it talks about all of the people who lived in Atlantis at the time of Atlantis leaving, that when the Great Flood happened, it was 144,000 people times 4. So that number always shows up, right? Those numbers were who escaped from Atlantis and they went 4 directions. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they went 4 directions. Now, when I was talking to somebody about that, a friend of mine from Fountain Reserve here in BC, she says, "Where'd you get this from?" I said, "Well, it came from inside of me." I said, I was told to write it. And she said, "That's exactly what we believe." Because in the book, I wrote that all of these people built all of these big boats, like 100-foot long boats. They had a lot of them. They put them up in the mountains and strapped them to the trees. And when the floods came, they went in the boats because the floods came and took over all the land. So this woman says to me, "We know of this story. We built the boats and strapped them to the trees up in the mountains." Do you see what I'm saying? Same story, right? That's the true story of Noah's Ark. That's the true story.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a long, long time ago. And the reality is that their belief systems are just as biblical and as ours, because they were taught to believe the same things. So their stories are the same stories as our stories. So their belief system needs to go back even further to all of our belief system, because all of us had a certain belief system 450,000 years ago, up to, because we were here for millions of years. So that system is very much in compromise now, because so many people believe that the old ways are the good ways, and the old ways are the good ways, not the little old ways.
Right, right.
Because if you go back into the history, women were superior. They were warriors. They were they tended the whole family. They looked after everything. The only thing the men did was hunt. The women did everything else. They were the gatherers. Men gathered too, but the women were the warriors. But they were magic. They knew how to do things, right? That magic, the shaman, the guru, the Buddhist, the Christian, all of the healers that belong to all of these different categories, we're all the same. It's just that we don't understand that because we have been told that belief system is separate of us. What if I explain to you, the moon's not even in the Bible? Did you know that? There's no mention of the moon in the Bible because it didn't exist. So yeah. So where do these stories come from then? The dark ones. They're not ours, are they? They're total manipulation of how we are told to believe. So we are told if we dress up every month on the full moon and do a ceremony, we're going to have abundance. Well, I used to sacrifice people and take out their bowels and disembowel them and their intestines and everything for a good crop. Does that mean that was a good thing to do? No. And yet it's a good thing to howl at the moon and figure. Now look, think of the werewolf. The werewolf really exists. It really is a true being. So are the vampires. So are everything. The creature from the Black Lagoon is the reptilians. The draconians are the vampires. They exist. These beings do exist. I've seen video. I know they exist. But I'm telling you that all of these are belief systems based on fear, aren't they? If you go right down to it, there's not love involved, is there? And even our Menzies, being told that our Menzies run with the moon. Most of us don't do well with that. We would rather be on our own routine. And if you want to go realistically, our Menzies is not so moon related as it's feminine related. And do you have any daughters?
I do.
You always got your period at the same time, didn't you?
Yes. When I worked in offices, I worked in OBGYN with all women, and
everybody
would have it at the exact same time.
So instead of looking at it like it's a moon connection, look at it as like a feminine connection.
Yes.
It's got nothing to do with the moon. Our Menzies is based on vibration, and our bodies respond vibrationally and aurically.
To that rhythm.
Yes. And it's not even to the moon. It's to the circadian rhythms in your own body, and nobody even knows that. And your circadian rhythms can vibrate onto somebody else's. And if you're awake, it even more, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting?
It's really interesting. And to go back to all those creatures you were talking about, the creature of Black Lagoon, the werewolf, the vampire, and all that, they all worked through the moon.
Yeah.
And the sun was their enemy.
Yeah.
The sun would take away their life force.
Yeah.
And so we've been taught that that's like, ooh, sci-fi, but there's truth in that.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, before we sign off, is there anything else that you would like to say to our viewers today? And we'll definitely get to part 2 because we're in the middle of getting so much information right now, and so many things are changing, and new information's here, and new energies are here, and old energy of new information is being circulated again for people to pick up. But we have to get rid of old programming in order to pick it up. But so we're going to have to do number 2 here sooner rather than later, Julie Lionhearted. So please, what can we share with all of our viewers for right now as we're coming up on Thanksgiving, and we've just had elections here in the States, and what can we leave our viewers with?
Trust, love yourself, awaken as much as you can. Start doing your self-healing. Start taking power over your body. Start looking at natural ways to do it, and start eating better, because your body is healing right now. You are all being put through a huge test right now, and nobody even knows it. You're going to tell me that you're feeling hurt. Your tummy hurts. Your shoulders hurt. Your neck hurts. Your brain hurts. Your eyes hurt. Your legs hurt. Your feet hurt. Your back hurts. Your hips hurt. Yeah. Your stomach really hurts because you're not digesting things well, because you're not digesting things willingly, because things are hurting you, and you got to pay attention to it. And this is all of us. It's not one of us. The ascension symptoms are real, and they're not very nice unless you treat your body well. If you treat your body well, no pain. No pain and all gain. No pain, all gain. Do yourself a favor and work on healing yourself, because it is you as a god and a goddess who is going to save everything. So wake up.
Breathe on that, everybody. Yes, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, until next time, thank you, Julie Lionhearted. And
I laugh and I
we'll
giggle when
get
I
you,
hear that.
we'll get you out, we'll get you away from bot patrol and out of bot confinement real soon.
Thank you.
All of
Okay,
us.
thank you.
And we
Yes.
can do that by liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, just really being from a place of compassion and love, and own your expressions, own them, because yeah, that's another video. All right,
Well,
we'll see you next time.
thank you. Bye.